Zainwestuj w akcje spółki do Rzeczy S.A.
Wspólnie tworzymy przestrzeń dla niezależnej myśli.
Zainwestuj w akcje spółki do Rzeczy S.A.
Dzień dobry, witam serdecznie, witamy w kolejnym programie. Dzisiaj bardzo ciekawy temat, z bardzo ciekawym gościem, o tym, co się dzieje na Ukrainie i nie tylko, o tym, że grozi nam trzecia wojna światowa, chociaż w polskich, europejskich mediach bardzo mocno ukrywa się ten fakt. Po ataku na kluczowe, bym powiedział, miejsca w Rosji poprzez ataku ukraińskiego dronami, zrobiło się bardzo niefortunnie. Ale też chciałbym porozmawiać o tym, dlaczego Donald Trump, który miał załatwić rozejm w 2 godziny, czy też 24 godziny, potem 48 godzin, po prostu nie dał rady. Dlaczego zawiódł na tej linii? O tym będziemy dzisiaj rozmawiać z moim gościem, a jest nim J.Jatras. Hello Jim, how you doing?
Good to be here with you. I'm doing great.
Yes, thank you very much, Jim. It's always a pleasure to speak to you. For those who don't know, J.Jatras is a retired former U.S. diplomat and GOP Senate foreign policy advisor. Jim, why? I'm just going to ask you straight away the question: why Donald Trump failed to deliver the peace deal with Russia?
Boy, I think the short answer to that is that he never really had any particularly clear idea of how he was going to go about it. He seemed to have this idea that he could be the big man, the peacemaker. He could grab, Zelensky and Putin by the scruff of the neck and bang their heads together, and you boys stop fighting and play nice, as though the United States had nothing to do with this. I mean, even Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, has admitted the war in Ukraine is a proxy war by the United States against Russia. Ukraine is just the proxy. But that doesn't seem to occur to President Trump. He really thinks that we have nothing to do with it. As a matter of fact, he even says, as you know, this is Biden's war. I had nothing to do with it. That's not true, of course. I mean, it was under the Trump administration that the Ukrainian army was built up into effectively a NATO army. He's the one, unlike the Obama administration, sent lethal assistance to Ukraine. He appointed Kurt Volker as a special envoy, who was a Raytheon lobbyist who just happened to reach the conclusion that what the Ukrainians need are a lot of Javelin missiles, and which are, of course, made by Raytheon. The long and the short of it is that if he had wanted to simply walk away from the problem from day one and not make it his problem, he, in principle, could have done that, although there's a real question, could he actually make the U.S. government stop its continuous operations in supporting the Kiev regime? But he didn't do that. Instead, he said, I'm going to do this myself. I'm going to go in there and try to solve this problem. It seems that he initially was willing to listen to the Russian concerns about what they call the root causes of the conflict, which again point right back to the United States and NATO. But it's amazing how quickly he turned on a dime after a couple of months and said, ceasefire, we need a ceasefire. And then that basically, I think, destroyed any chance of moving forward diplomatically on Ukraine, because the Russians have made it clear that they will not accept a ceasefire, which would simply turn into another Minsk agreement type deception. And, they behave stupidly sometimes in Moscow, but they're not quite that stupid. And so I think we're at an impasse now. There can be no real significant negotiation on any sort, and the war will continue. And that raises then a whole lot of other questions.
Yeah, but the thing is that what you just said about the Trump, that it's not my war, it's a Biden's war. It's not true anymore, because it's not a 1 month after the Donald Trump took over as a president, as a new president. Right. It's like half a year now, or even more. Yeah, half a year from this moment. Today we're recording it. It's half a year. So it's his war. He's the president of the United States. He's the chief of the government, so he's taking the full responsibility. So I don't understand why it's still like this kind of attitude from the Washington, D.C. Why are we, okay, it's not ours. No, you took over. Okay, it was a really bad state, was a really bad situation, but now you're responsible. Tell me, do you as an American waiting for this kind of response from the government. That sorry, we failed, but we're going to try to repair it. Because I still, I try to watch all this independent kind of sort of independent commentaries, journalists, and there is no this kind of cloud. I mean, there is no this kind of attitude and way of thinking. It's our deal now. It's our mistake. What do you say about that?
When have you heard anybody from any government anywhere say they've made a mistake about something? I mean, they never do. They never admit fault about anything. And of course, Trump, being the kind of ego he is the last person in the world who will ever admit to having made a mistake on something. Yeah, you're right. It's his war now. He, in principle, could have walked away from it. Like I said, I'm not sure he actually could have, because as we know, he has almost no ability to make the wheels of government turn in the way he wants them to turn. He doesn't even have full control over the executive branch, much less over control of Congress. And of course, you've got Lindsey Graham and Senator Richard Blumenthal nipping at his heels to try to get him to accept a new sanctions from hell bill that they've got 80 sponsors for in the Senate, which is well above veto strength. I think he simply wandered into this thinking he could just make a deal. I'll insult these guys, then I'll insult those guys, and then I'll make them, come together. I mean, it was just foolish from the start, and now he's finding himself trapped. I wrote back in December that even before he took office, that the only way that Trump could move forward would be to try to sell the Russians on some kind of a deception. A phony deal like Minsk, because that's the only way there was any possibility of some kind of an agreement between the two sides, and that would depend on whether the Russians were willing to be fooled again. I likened it to Charlie Brown kicking the football again with Lucy holding it. I don't know if they have that idea over there in Poland. In any case, I think the interesting thing right now is, where has he been for the last 24 hours? After this whole business with the second round of negotiations in Istanbul, which lasted an hour and nothing much of importance happened there, predictably. And then we have the attack today on the Kerch Bridge. Just yesterday, of course, there were all the drone strikes on the Russian bombers. He's hiding out somewhere. And at some point, he's going to have to resurface and say something. My guess is he's not going to blame Zelensky. He's going to blame Putin, and he's being roped back onto the Biden policy.
Jim, I'd like to apologize to you for not to believe in your words. I remember when we've been doing the interview about Trump, and I asked you the question, is he going to change anything? And you've been like skeptical, and you just said, well, what you just know from your experience as a former diplomat. You just said maybe he's going to do something, but literally he's not going to do anything which was going to have a major impact. And what? And I see it now. I mean, the few really wise people in Poland just told me the same. How you expect to stop the war in Ukraine if you been given the money from all the biggest companies which they create the weapons in the United States? It's not possible. Who are earning a lot of billions on this conflict. So thank you for your wise words for that time and now. But
it's the beard. It's the beard.
It's the beard. Yeah, I believe so. Yeah. as a Catholic, I cannot say that it's because you're part of Orthodox Church. But let's stay with the beard. Okay, let's stay with the beard. Jim, are we on the brink of now, after what happened with these bombers, this drone attack by Ukraine? Are we on the brink of nuclear war?
I don't think so. Right after the bomber attacks, especially when they were giving very high numbers of the aircraft that supposedly had been destroyed, you had a lot of people, especially people from the pro-Russian side, saying, okay, this is it. They're going to take the gloves off. They're really just the response will be very, very harsh. And then other people, like there's a member of the Russian Duma, Sergei Markov, who just yesterday was saying, I think there'll be no response at all. And I think what we're seeing is the kind of typical Nothing to see here, folks. Same old response from the Russians saying it's done no real damage now, that it really doesn't change the course of the war, and that the response will be either demonstrative without much military effect, or they won't really respond much at all. I think that's a mistaken reading on the Russian side of their NATO opponents, that anytime the Russians show any kind of restraint and look at it just in terms of military hardware and numbers, and that, okay, this doesn't matter, we don't have no need to respond, that the other side reads that as provocative weakness. Every time they take a shot at the Russians and the Russians don't do anything, the West says, oh, the Russians are weak, the Russians are afraid. We can escalate a little farther and see what happens next. So I think there's a potential of an escalation to something extremely dangerous, but I don't think it will come directly from this attack, although we should keep in mind, this is an attack on the Russian strategic forces. This is not, something relevant, particularly to the Ukrainian theater of war. This is like the Armavir radar attack in, I think, was May of 2024, that it would be the equivalent of an attack by, say, the Russians on our NORAD early warning system about an ICBM attack or an attack on our strategic bombers. And make no mistake here, Piotr, this was an American and British attack on the Russians. The Ukrainians could not have done this themselves. Maybe some Ukrainian pushed the final button to make the whole thing happen. But technically, intelligence-wise and so forth, I don't see that the Ukrainians would have this capability at all. If this is, again, just think of the magnitude of this. If, say, the Russians or the Chinese or somebody else had launched this kind of attack inside the United States. And again, so the Russians look at this. I think they do take it seriously, but I think the response will be very, very minimal.
Yeah, but maybe it's not going to be a nuclear weapon response, but is it going to be like a response in the sense of, okay, we're going to be not going to respond it now, but we're going to send more troops. We're going to finally we're going to do full action war against Ukraine, and we're going to move forward until maybe West going to wake up and say, okay, let's make a deal. What I reckon is that Putin lost it in sense of lost his patience. That's what I meant. He lost his patience, and he said, okay, we're going to do it normal. Everything's going to happen on the battlefield. We're going to solve all the problems on the battlefield, but we're going to get to the situation when West, or America, a great United Kingdom, and all these countries like this coalition will gonna beg for truth.
That could happen, but honestly, I don't expect it. I mean, as I've been saying all along, the Russian approach to this conflict has been what I call pedagogical. It's exactly what you said. The Russians will do X, it'll show they're serious, and then the other side will say, fine, we'll meet your terms. I don't think that's ever going to happen. And even if there is, first off, if there is a Russian response to this particular attack, I think it will be the form that it's taken in the past, where they will do a series of demonstrative drone and missile strikes on various targets in Ukraine. There'll be military targets, but they'll be accused of being civilian targets. And then the question I would ask is, okay, so what are they doing now in retaliation, which is not something they should be doing anyway in the normal course of the war if they actually expected to win this militarily? I don't think the Russians have ever expected the solution to this conflict to be a military solution. I think they've always had the unrealistic belief that at some point the other side will come to the table and present something reasonable from the Russian point of view, which I don't think is ever going to happen. Now, are they going to change that and finally say, okay, that's it? We're just going to have. Let me ask you this, Piotr. Why do they not target the nerve center, the command and control centers of the Kiev regime? Why are those virtually off limits? I mean, we saw what appeared to be a few days ago in Kursk, what looked like an assassination attempt against Putin. If the Ukrainians could kill him, they would. They assassinate people all over Russia, generals, political figures, and so forth. journalists like Daria Dugin, and they're proud of it. They crashed a civilian train the other day, and which is open and shut case of terrorism. They're proud of that too. And I'm not saying the Russians should resort to the same thing, but where is the indication that they actually are going to target the regime, its brains and its arteries, the bridges over the Dnieper, instead of simply killing off thousands and thousands and thousands of Ukrainian men at the front, which I think, again, is simply pedagogical. Have you had enough pain yet? Have you had enough pain yet? Will you now meet our terms? That seems to be the Russian pattern. Maybe that will change. Maybe it'll change while this program is being conducted, but I don't see it changing it right now.
Yeah, it is like that. In the beginning of this conflict, 3 years ago, I'm not in the beginning, but when this all started, I called it a strange war, and it's still going on. A strange war, because Russia, you just said it, it's not doing it. They could eliminate the people from the Kiev regime long time ago, and sort it out. Like both sides are really looking into continue this conflict to make more money on the people's death. Okay, how this this which we started our conversation from, this, I call it a failure of Donald Trump, is coming on in the United States. Yeah. Do the people comment on that? Do they see this failure? Do they want or pushing on the government? Oh, come on, guys, stop talking, just do something about it.
Not exactly, no. Remember, most Americans don't pay attention to this kind of stuff much, and they filter it through a political or a partisan lens. So, for example, the people who, let's say on the left, who hate Trump, he's Putin's puppet, he's selling out the Ukrainians are a noble democratic ally against the evil, Vladimir Putin, and so on and so forth. And then on the right, you have the people who think that every word out of Trump's mouth is true. You know what? He built that wall on the Mexican border, and he made the Mexicans pay for it. Promises made, promises kept. And they really don't pay attention to the details and don't really know much about what's actually happening on the ground in any of these conflicts, and frankly, don't much care. So if, the Orange Messiah tells them that he's going to make a deal with Putin, it's five-dimensional chess. He really knows what he's doing. The art of the deal. That's his strong suit. And then when all comes to nothing, and then he'll end up blaming one side or the other. I assume he'll end up blaming the Russian side. They'll all say, well, Trump tried to do his best, but that Putin, boy, he just wouldn't budge. Now we've really got his number. And then when we go back to the previous policy, which is essentially the Biden policy, none of them will call it that. They'll just say, well, Biden was too weak, and that's why it didn't succeed. But Trump, he's strong, and that's why this policy will work better. Most Americans don't really have anything more than a very superficial level of understanding of these things. They just don't care. They've got, it's not because they're stupid. It's just because their focus is on other things in their lives. But they simply look at it in terms of, is it on my team or their team? Is it the America First mega Trump team, or is it on the hate American, woke left Biden AOC crowd? But that's the only way they look at it.
All right, so let's talk about the Middle East politics, U.S. politics. But that's the funny thing for me. I'm funny. I don't know if there's a correct word to describe it as a funny, because what we have a genocide in Gaza. Nobody seems to care about it in the West. I mean, when I look at it, all these people have a full of mouth of these words, liberty, and all this. We need to help poor people. Just looking at this genocide and nothing at all. Yeah. And, and I heard Donald Trump who says, let's build some kind of, hotels and some kind of stuff on Gaza, and that makes me like speechless. So this man who seemed to do some change is no change at all. What about this Middle East? Explain to us, Jim. What is all about the Saudi Arabia deals and stuff like that? What is behind it? How are we supposed to read it?
I don't know that I can explain it entirely. I mean, again, they say Trump has a very transactional way of looking at the world. And obviously people like the Saudis, and let's not forget the Qataris and their, what, a golden airplane or whatever the hell they gave him, understand this very, very well. Supposedly, Trump, again, not only is he transactional, he tends to be very personal. Apparently he likes Mohammed bin Salman. That's his new best friend forever out there in the Middle East. He and Bibi Netanyahu apparently are not buddies anymore, although, frankly, I don't think that matters very much because Mr. Netanyahu has a lot more influence in Washington than Mr. Trump does in terms of which way the American government will swing. So, Trump is, I think, also in a difficult position there, too. I think he would like to avoid a war in the Middle East, particularly a war against Iran, that Mr. Netanyahu is very keen on. And frankly, I think he could trigger anytime he wants to. As you point out with respect to Gaza, nobody's really paying much attention to that except a fairly small group of people, mostly on the left, but also some on the right, who are concerned about the human toll that's being taken there. I've noticed a lot of people who are screaming from the rafters that Putin is targeting civilians in Ukraine, never have any of the cell phone footage of the kind that we see from Gaza every day about a lot of civilians being killed there. The whole Gaza thing, again, tends to fall down into the kind of narrative I talked about with Ukraine. Whose side are you on? The good side or the bad side? The side of the angels or the side of the devils? The only difference is which side is the angels and which side is the devils. It's still a black and white narrative. So you either believe that, Israel's God's chosen people, God loves the state of Israel, anything they do is right, the Palestinians are Amalek, they shall be destroyed, there are no innocent civilians in Gaza, they all voted for Hamas and they deserve what they get. Or you have the other side, which is the Israelis are the spawn of Satan. It's an evil state, a genocidal state, apartheid state, all that anti-white stuff, anti-settler, colonialism, apartheid. They pull out all those terms, and that if there was a single Palestinian state, it would be Christians, Jews, and Muslims would all live together in peace and harmony, holding hands and singing Kumbaya. There's no middle ground between those two things either. It depends on which team you're on.
But I don't understand it because I don't understand it. The killing is the killing. You know what I mean? I'm not going black and white.
Yeah.
The thing is,
no. You've got this wrong. Some killing is good. Some killing is bad. It just depends whether the good guys are doing the killing or the bad guys doing the killing.
Yeah, but at war, the killing innocent children, innocent women, innocent old people. It doesn't matter which side you're on. If you're doing it. And you justify it, and that's what scares me the most. Because I never heard of Hamas. Maybe I haven't seen a lot who been talking about their victims the way the Jews do it. When they're talking about in a TV live, for example, about how they torture them, how they talk to them. I mean, I'm not a big fan of Islamic Muslim word, you know what I mean? But the thing is,
yeah.
So are we a Christian a civilization? Or are we just someone who is what? Because as far as I've seen, there was always rules of war. We fight it with our enemy.
Yeah.
But we're not killing the civilians. Is something's changed?
Yeah, sure. I mean, we're a post-Christian civilization. And to the extent that U.S. policy has any particular Christian influence in it, it tends to be what we call dispensationalist Christian Zionism, which accepts wholeheartedly that this is a black and white thing, that Israel is God's chosen people, and anything they do is right, and that anybody on the other side is Amalek, who must be destroyed root and branch. And you can call that Christian if you want. I don't think it's very Christian. I mean, you can have a positive attitude toward Israel in some respect, and also their security needs and so on and so forth. But as you point out, there's a limit to what militarily would be a moral policy in self-defense. And again, you can't always be sure about these things because the media lie about everything, and they tend to be also on one side or the other in their coverage. You can take to some extent what you see from independent sources, again, cell phone footage and so on and so forth. But as we know from the Syrian war, for example, people can lie on all sides of any conflict. So it's always hard to know exactly what is going on. But the extent to which we see things that appear to be well over the line on how you conduct a war and look out for your own security, I think the Israelis are crossing that and then some in Gaza. And let's not forget Netanyahu, his brass ring and all this, the real prize he's after is to get the United States into a war with Iran. And then we're going to see a carnage that will make Gaza look like a picnic.
So let's put it this way, because the Polish people might not understand it. So the Israel does this horrible things in Gaza to provoke the whole Islamic world to, or the Iran country to start this conflict, which, like you said, is going to be nothing compared to this war out in the Middle West between Israel and Iran. That's what did I make? Did I understand you right?
I think that's more or less correct. I think that the Israelis want to clear out the population of Gaza anyway for its own sake. But if you listen to Netanyahu, everything's about Iran. Gaza's about Iran. Hezbollah in Lebanon, that's about Iran. Syria, where of course they just had a major victory in December of last year in league with Turkey, that's about Iran too. Yemen is about Iran. Everything is Iran, Iran, Iran. And of course, Trump already took the first step into that mess during his first term when he canceled the JCPOA agreement with Iran, which was not a perfect agreement by any means, but no agreement is. Now you see him and his envoy, Steve Witkoff, going back and forth. Oh, we're close to a deal. Yes, the Iranians can enrich up to a 3% level, or whatever it is, under the non-proliferation treaty. No, they can't. Zero enrichment of uranium whatsoever, which of course nobody would agree to. There's also some speculation about where the Russians and the Chinese will fall in if there's a conflict with Iran. I don't think Trump wants a war with Iran. I don't think he wants a war at all, to tell the truth, because I think he knows it would be a disaster for his presidency, but he's not in control. Bibi is.
Yeah, that was the whole thing which you just mentioned. He was pretending that he can be independent and he can do everything he wants, and he can be even in fight with Bibi Netanyahu. But Bibi just waited a few days and then reminded him who's in charge in Washington. That was so funny for me.
Well, I forget his exact words, but the other day Trump said something along the lines that even if Israel gets into a war with Iran, we would not necessarily back them up. But then depending on developments, we might have to do that anyway. Well, what that boils down to is saying, look, we can tell Bibi, no, don't do it. But then if he does launch an attack and then all hell breaks loose, there's no way at all, no way in hell that the United States would not support him 110%.
Is this we're talking about, now they're talking about Russia again, and that they're going to put some, under the sanctions and stuff like that. I'm laughing about it because we have a BRICS.
Yeah.
Do they realize, does Trump realize that this kind of actions makes BRICS stronger and will soon replace they soon will put, for example, Russia, China in a situation that they don't need America anymore, and it will be really devastating for the American economy. Because when I hear that Japan is pissed off about America, about Trump's policy,
right,
and they want to make deal with China. They want to. So it's so funny because you would never realize that Japan will do it, but they say, sorry, but you don't treat us fairly. You don't treat us with your decisions like you're supposed to do. We're going somewhere. We have a fair deal. We have a good transactions, and you make money. So do you think that this kind of politics will bring, in terms of U.S. economy, to your knees? Because it looks like it's sanctions. I'm laughing about it. What else you can forbidden for Russia? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
They just defended themselves. They even become stronger. You know,
Right.
they're supposed to be betting, like, you know, in Polish. I remember myself, the Polish news in the first year of the war. They say, oh, Russia will fall down economically because the sanctions are working. Yeah, right. They are getting stronger and stronger. And the nation, I'm talking about Russians as nation, they say, yeah, go
Yeah.
for it. Okay, we have a war, we fight fascism. There's always a propaganda over that. But
Yeah.
in terms of economy, they are stronger. You agree with that?
I agree with that, but you started the question with what doesn't Trump realize? And I guess the question of what Trump realizes is a very difficult question to answer. I have no idea what he realizes. I mean, you know, look what he did when he came out and he said, near the beginning of his presidency, I think, that if BRICS were to come out with a currency, he put 100% tariff on all their goods and defend our fabulous dollar and all that kind of nonsense. You know, supposedly he put in all these tariffs. And by the way, as an old, you know, Pat Buchanan supporter, in principle, I like tariffs as opposed to other taxes. But you don't just go around slapping taxes on the rest of the world, tariffs on the rest of the world, and then think that somehow that's going to magically cause an avalanche of money into the U.S. Treasury, or magically cause U.S. Manufacturing industry to come back. You know, he has not proposed anything along the lines of an infrastructure bill. I mean, you know, we don't have a single mile of high-speed rail in this entire country compared to what you're seeing in the rest of the world. We have nothing like the Chinese Belt and Road Initiative that we're building either in our country or through the Western Hemisphere, nothing like that. So I don't think he has any plan. He has any strategy on this except to try to pressure other countries to supporting the American global empire, which is both a military and financial empire, not so much an economic empire, in as it currently exists, as long as he can keep it going. That's why I keep thinking of Trump as kind of like an American Gorbachev. He is thrashing around and trying to readjust things in a way that will save a failing system, and he's not going to be able to succeed. In fact, I think he'll become a catalyst for its collapse. No, I don't. You know, again, to answer my own question or your question, I don't think he realizes this is at all. When we look at sanctions on Russia, and of course the Graham Blumenthal sanctions from hell would be really sanctions on the rest of the world, going after the Chinese, going after the Indians, and so forth. Who's really suffered from these sanctions? The Russians? No, Europe has. Europe has. I don't know how it's been in Poland. I don't know to what extent the Polish economy has suffered from sanctions and the higher fuel prices and so forth, the way, for example, Germany has. But I can't imagine it's been very positive to you. By the way, I've been meaning to ask you, I'm sure there have been thousands of Polish soldiers who have died in Ukraine up till now under various descriptions. You know, maybe they've been seconded to the Ukrainian forces, maybe they're volunteers and so forth. Is this controversial in Poland that you have lost people there?
Of course it is. Everybody's hush, hush. We don't talk about it. No. I mean, the people, if you ask me, the normal people on the internet,
Yeah.
on the Telegram, on the other social media, they talking openly. What do you know, the common opinion about it is, common like a question is, what the hell you have in your head to defend the Nazi Ukraine? The truth is forbidden. I can tell you.
So it's not hateful. It's not hateful for the Banderas to kill all the Poles. It's hateful for Poles to refer to it.
That's it, Jim. If you had to describe or judge the first 6 years of Donald Trump presidency, what would you say? How would you describe it? How would you what would you say about that?
Well, I don't know. When he first took office in 2017, I was very hopeful. In those days, I saw it. And in fact, I even wrote a piece called Mikhail Octavian Trump, that he had the opportunity to be an American Octavian, that the American republic, such as it was, and I do put that in the past tense, is on its last legs, and that he had the opportunity and duty to do what Octavian did with the Roman Republic, to restore the Republic by trashing what can't be saved, saving what can be saved, and restoring the Republic in a way that preserves the values of the core American identity, even though the shell of the Constitution is no longer viable. Obviously, he had no idea how to do that, even if he wanted to do something like that, which is why I said he turned out not to an Octavian, but more like an American Gorbachev. I think that was certainly true during his first term. During the first 100 days of this term, I was actually surprised, and somewhat pleasantly surprised, that he came in with more of a shock and awe in terms of, what Doge was doing, in terms of, trying to address the mess in our government and so forth, although even that was not what it appeared to be. But that was low-hanging fruit. That's stuff he could do with executive orders within his ability as the president. And to tell the truth, that was not very much. The big job of anything he could possibly accomplish would have to be legislative and getting things through Congress. You've noticed, by the way, he has not sent a single major legislative initiative to Congress during this second term. I mean, you'd think if he was serious, just like he had those executive orders ready to go when he took office, he'd have a big bucket of legislation he wanted passed, ready to go as soon as he came into office. He didn't. All he's got is his great, big, beautiful bill that is going to just explode the amount of spending that will be done by the federal government that we can't afford. He wants $1 trillion for the military budget. I don't even call it a defense budget because it has nothing to do with defending this country. It's all about power projection. I mean, if you listen to other smart guys like, Colonel Douglas McGregor and so forth, we should be cutting the military budget in half. We don't need this kind of money for power projection around the world. We should be defending our own damn border here at home, and we're not doing that. So, I think he's just completely lost any prospect that he had to make America great again. As I say, I think the high point of his administration is already behind us. It's going to be downhill from here. I think there's a very good chance the Democrats will take over in Congress next year, and after next year's election, and we'll probably get back to an impeachment scenario.
That's the sad things, but said but true. What can I say? J.Jatras, thank you very much for this interview. Retired former U.S. diplomat, GOP Senate Foreign Policy Advisor. Thank you very much. It's always a pleasure and honor to talk to you.
Likewise. Thank you.
Thank you. Dziękuję Państwu za uwagę. To były bardzo mądre słowa, które powiedział J.Jatras. Zapraszam do lajkowania, udostępniania, komentowania. Zapraszam, proszę Państwa, również do tego, byście podawali dalej. Zachęcam do po prostu wspierania nas finansowego. Zachęcam do tego, byście pomogli nam jeszcze w większym rozwoju, żebyśmy coraz częściej prezentowali dla Państwa takie wywiady jak z panem J.Jatrasem. Gdyby nie wy, nie byłoby nas. Dziękuję za uwagę. Do zobaczenia. Do widzenia.